What if the sanctuary you built for your child became a battlefield? Samantha Owens wasn't forged for battle. At 34, she was a single mother who'd spent a decade piecing together a life for herself and her 6-year-old daughter, Lily, through sheer grit and quiet determination. Her days were an unrelenting grind, 12-hour shifts at Willow Creek General Hospital, where she worked as a nurse, her hands steady as she soothed patients' fears while masking her own exhaustion. Her nights were spent at her kitchen table, crafting candles for her Etsy shop, each scent, lavender dusk, cedar sunrise, ocean mist, a fragile rebellion against a life stretched thin by bills and dreams deferred. She dreamed of giving Lily a childhood filled with wonder, a trip to see the northern lights, a college fund, a future where her daughter could chase her dreams without the weight of scarcity. 2 years ago, Samantha had poured every cent of her savings into a modest 2-bedroom house in Willow Creek, a suburban enclave where towering oaks and manicured lawns hid a suffocating undercurrent of control. She'd imagined barbecues with neighbors, Lily riding her bike in the cul-de-sac, a community that felt like family. But Willow Creek came with a hidden cost. The Willow Creek Homeowners Association, ruled by Karen Mitchell. In her late 40s, Karen was a suburban tyrant, blonde highlights always pristine, pastel cardigans buttoned to perfection, and a smile that could slice through steel. Her emails landed like court summons, dictating everything from the exact shade of mailbox paint to the precise angle of holiday wreaths. A trash can left out past 7 a.m.? A $75 fine. A hedge trimmed a half-inch too short? $100. For Samantha, who counted every dollar to keep her and Lily afloat, those fines were a relentless assault on her dreams. The trouble began early. A month after moving in, Samantha received a $100 fine for non-compliant landscaping, because her rose bushes were deemed unkempt. She spent a weekend pruning them, her hands raw and bleeding from thorns, only to find another notice 2 weeks later for visible garden tools, left out for a single afternoon. She tried to comply, setting alarms to drag her trash cans in before dawn, repainting her mailbox 3 times to match Karen's approved color chart, power washing her driveway to erase a faint oil stain from her aging Honda. But the violations kept coming. $75 for a cracked patio tile, $50 for a basketball hoop Lily had begged for, $200 for excessive exterior lighting from fairy lights hung for Lily's 6th birthday, $150 for a non-compliant bird feeder that attracted too many sparrows, $250 for a cluttered porch when Lily's tricycle was left out overnight, $300 for a non-approved flower pot that held her mother's favorite geraniums. Each fine was a dagger, slicing into her savings for Lily's future. A college fund, a trip to the Grand Canyon, a month without panic over the mortgage. At night, Samantha lay awake, her mind a calculator of dread. Hospital bills, Lily's school supplies, the $700 she still owed for a fence repair Karen had demanded after a storm. She wasn't a fighter, she was a healer, someone who mended broken bodies and soothed broken spirits. But every snide remark from Karen at HOA meetings, every new violation notice slipped under her door, stoked a quiet ember of defiance. She just didn't know how to let it burn without risking the life she'd built for Lily. The neighbors offered little solace. Most kept their heads down, paying their fines and nodding along at HOA meetings where Karen held court like a queen. Those who resisted, like Mr. Henderson, a retired teacher who'd fought an $800 fine over a fence height restriction, were buried under a deluge of violations until they sold their homes or surrendered. Samantha watched it unfold, her heart heavy with the knowledge that fighting back could cost her everything. Lily was her anchor, her reason to keep going. "Why do you work so much, Mommy?" Lily would ask, her crayons scattered across the kitchen table, her gap-toothed smile a beacon in Samantha's storm. "So we can have adventures someday, kiddo," Samantha would say, ruffling her daughter's curls. But inside she felt like she was failing, not just Lily but the woman she'd once hoped to become, the one who'd dreamed of opening a small candle shop downtown, of traveling with Lily to see the world. Samantha's only solace was her candles. Each one was a small act of creation, a way to carve beauty out of chaos. She'd light a lavender dusk candle after Lily went to bed, the soft glow calming her as she balanced her checkbook or answered customer emails. She'd named her latest scent Willow Whisper, a blend of sage and moonlight inspired by the quiet strength she wished she had. But even that felt fragile, a flicker of hope that could be snuffed out by another fine, another demand from Karen. At the hospital, she began to hear whispers from colleagues who lived in Willow Creek, stories of their own run-ins with Karen, fines for everything from unauthorized porch furniture to excessive Halloween decorations. Maria, a fellow nurse, shared how Karen had fined her $300 for a non-compliant mailbox, despite it being identical to the one on Karen's own property. Dr. Evans, a pediatrician, recounted a $400 fine for a disorderly lawn when his sprinkler system broke during a vacation. Mrs. Torres, a hospital janitor, whispered about a $200 fine for a non-approved wind chime that had hung in her yard for years. It was a pattern, a web of control that stretched beyond her street, and Samantha felt trapped in its center. She started keeping a journal, documenting every violation notice, every snide comment, every moment Karen's shadow loomed over her life, not knowing if it would ever matter but needing to hold on to something tangible. She sketched designs for new candle scents in its margins, each one a quiet promise to herself that she'd find a way through. By June, Samantha was drowning. The hospital had slashed her shifts due to budget cuts, leaving her scrambling to cover the mortgage. Her candle business was growing. Her Etsy shop had hit 1,800 sales, with customers raving about her hand-poured creations. But the profits were a trickle, barely enough for groceries, let alone the $2,000 it would cost to fix her pool's pump. The pool had been a dream when she bought the house, a sparkling oasis where she'd pictured Lily learning to swim, hosting friends, making memories that would outlast their struggles. But maintenance was a beast, chemicals, filters, weekly cleanings, and with her finances stretched to the breaking point, Samantha made the heart-wrenching decision to lock it for the season. She drained it, scrubbed the tiles until her arms burned, and padlocked the gate, promising Lily they'd reopen it next summer. "It's just for now, sweetie," she said, her voice cracking as Lily's disappointed pout carved a hole in her heart. The decision didn't go unnoticed. Karen's son, Derek, had been treating Samantha's pool like his personal resort. At 17, Derek was the embodiment of entitlement, tall, lanky, with a permanent smirk and a wardrobe of designer sneakers funded by his mother's HOA influence. He'd show up uninvited, hopping Samantha's fence to swim, leaving soda cans, chip bags, cigarette butts, and once a vape pen leaking battery acid onto her patio table. He'd trampled her marigolds with a football, laughing as he tossed it into her rose bushes, and left muddy footprints across her deck. One time he'd brought friends, their music blaring through a Bluetooth speaker until midnight, waking Lily and prompting a $150 fine from Karen for noise disturbance. Another time he'd left a half-eaten pizza on her patio, ants swarming it by morning, and Samantha had spent hours scrubbing the grease stains off the wood. She tolerated it, biting her tongue to avoid Karen's wrath, but the locked gate changed everything. One sweltering afternoon, Samantha dragged herself home from a double shift, her scrubs damp with sweat, her head throbbing from 20 hours on her feet. She froze at the sight of Derek scaling her fence, his muddy sneakers smudging her deck, a screwdriver glinting in his hand as he pried at the padlock. Lily was at a playdate, thank God, but the audacity of his intrusion lit a fire in Samantha's chest. She stormed outside, her voice sharp as a whip. "Derek, what the hell are you doing?" He barely glanced up, his movements casual as if he owned the place. "Chill, Sam. It's hot as hell. I'm just gonna swim." "It's Samantha," she snapped, her hands trembling with a mix of fear and fury. "The pool's closed. You need to leave. Now." He scoffed, tossing the screwdriver onto the deck with a clatter that echoed like a challenge. "You can't just lock it. Everyone uses it. Mom says it's basically community property. It's my pool, Derek. On my land. And I'm telling you to get out of my yard." His smirk twisted into a scowl, and he stepped toward her, using his 6'2" frame to loom over her 5'4" one. His voice was low, venomous. "You're being a bitch about this, you know that? My mom's gonna hear about this and you're gonna regret it." Samantha's heart pounded, fear clawing at her throat, but she held her ground, her fists clenched so tightly her nails drew blood. "I don't care what your mom thinks. Get off my property or I'll call the police." Derek laughed, a cruel barking sound that sent a chill down her spine. "Go ahead. They won't touch me. You're nobody here." He kicked the gate, the metal rattling violently, then vaulted back over the fence with infuriating ease, leaving the screwdriver and a trail of muddy footprints behind. Samantha stood frozen, her breath ragged, staring at the bent gate hinges and the glinting screwdriver. Her hands shook as she picked it up, its cold weight a reminder of Derek's arrogance. She wanted to believe it was over, but his parting words echoed in her mind, "You're gonna regret it." She knew this wasn't the end. That night, she installed a cheap security camera from the hardware store, its red light blinking in the dark, a small act of defiance against the threat she felt looming. She checked the footage obsessively, her journal now filled with timestamps of Derek's intrusions, a record of her growing resolve. The next morning she found a small dent in her mailbox as if someone had kicked it in passing, and the day after, a crack in her patio table's glass top, too precise to be an accident. Though she couldn't prove it was Derek, the coincidence felt too sharp to ignore. She added each incident to her journal, her handwriting tight with anger and fear, and began parking her car in the garage, locking her doors twice, keeping a baseball bat by her bed. 2 nights later, the phone shattered the silence of Samantha's home. She jolted awake, her heart hammering as the shrill ring cut through the darkness. Lily's soft snores drifted from the next room, a small comfort in the chaos. The voice on the phone, a clipped, official tone, sent ice through her veins. "Ma'am, this is the police. We're responding to a 911 call from your property. Stay where you are." Samantha's mind raced. She hadn't called 911. Her bare feet hit the cold floor as she threw on a robe, her hands shaking. She peered through the curtains, her breath catching at the sight of red and blue lights pulsing in her driveway. Then she heard it, the creak of her backyard gate, followed by the unmistakable splash of water from her locked pool. Someone was in her yard. She stepped outside, clutching her phone like a lifeline as 2 officers approached. The older one, Officer Daniels, had a grizzled face and a no-nonsense demeanor, his badge glinting under the streetlights. "Ma'am, we got a call about a disturbance," he said. "A young man claims you're denying him access to a community pool." Samantha's stomach twisted into knots. "There's no community pool," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "This is my property. I locked it for the season, and Derek Mitchell, Karen Mitchell's son, has been trespassing to use it. He's been breaking in for months, leaving trash, damaging my plants, breaking my patio table. I have security footage." The second officer, Officer Patel, younger and wiry, scribbled in a notepad, his dark eyes scanning the scene. "You're saying the kid who called us broke into your yard?" Before she could answer, Derek's voice cut through the night like a blade. "She's lying. This is bullshit." He stumbled from the backyard, his hair dripping, his shirt clinging to his chest, water pooling at his feet. He'd clearly been in the pool despite the padlock. "She can't lock me out. Everyone uses it. My mom said." Daniels cut him off, his voice calm but edged with authority. "Son, you're in her yard. Did you have permission to be here?" Derek's face twisted with indignation, his voice rising to a shout. "I don't need permission. My mom runs this neighborhood. She'll have your job for this." Patel stepped forward, his tone steady but unyielding. "Calm down, kid. Show me some ID." Derek patted his pockets, his bravado crumbling as he realized he had nothing. "I don't have it, but I live here. Ask anyone." Samantha's voice was steady now, her fear giving way to resolve. "He doesn't live here. This is my house. He climbed my fence. He's done it before. I have footage from tonight." She pulled up the security video on her phone, showing Derek scaling the fence an hour earlier, his face clear under the camera's grainy light, the screwdriver in his hand as he tampered with the lock. Daniels nodded toward the backyard. "Show me where he got in." Samantha led them to the gate, her flashlight illuminating the bent hinges, the screwdriver still lying on the deck, and the muddy footprints trailing to the pool. The water shimmered faintly, rippling from Derek's intrusion. She showed them the footage, time-stamped and clear, of Derek prying at the lock, then climbing in, his friend's laughter audible in the background. Derek trailed behind, his protests growing louder and more frantic, his voice cracking with desperation. "This is a setup. She's trying to get me in trouble. My mom will." Patel cut him off, his voice sharp. "Step over here, kid." When Derek hesitated, his face flushed with rage, he shoved Patel hard, his hands slamming into the officer's chest. "Get off me," he shouted, swinging wildly, his fist grazing Patel's shoulder. Patel stumbled but caught himself, his hands snapping to his radio. "Hands behind your back now," he barked, his voice cutting through the night. Derek froze, his eyes wide with shock, as if the reality of consequences had just slammed into him. When he hesitated, Daniels grabbed his arm, twisting it behind him with practiced ease. Within seconds, Derek was in handcuffs, his face a mix of fury and disbelief as he was marched to the patrol car. His protest grew muffled, swallowed by the night as the car door slammed shut. Samantha stood rooted to the spot, her heart pounding. She hadn't wanted this, not exactly. She just wanted him to leave her alone, to stop treating her home like his playground. But as the red and blue lights illuminated her quiet street, neighbors began to peek out from behind curtains, their silhouettes ghostly in the windows. Phones lit up and whispers spread like wildfire. By morning, Willow Creek was buzzing with gossip, the story of Derek's arrest already taking on a life of its own. Karen's SUV screeched to a halt 10 minutes later, its tires squealing against the pavement. She stormed out, her usual polished facade shattered, her hair disheveled, her cardigan misbuttoned. "What is going on here?" she shrieked, her voice echoing through the neighborhood. "That's my son. You can't do this." Daniels didn't flinch, his voice calm but unyielding. "Ma'am, your son was trespassing and assaulted an officer. He's being taken to the station." "He's a child." Karen screamed, her hands flailing as she jabbed a finger at Samantha, who stood silently on her porch. "This is her fault. She's been causing trouble since she moved here. She set him up. She's a liar." The officers ignored her, closing the car door on Derek's muffled curses. As they drove away, Karen turned her fury on Samantha, her eyes blazing with a hatred so raw it made Samantha's skin crawl. "You'll pay for this," she hissed, her voice low and venomous. "You have no idea who you're messing with. I'll make sure you lose everything, your house, your kid, your pathetic little candle business." She sped off after the patrol car, her taillights disappearing into the night, leaving Samantha alone in the dark. Samantha sank onto her porch steps, her hands trembling, her breath coming in short, ragged gasps. She didn't feel triumphant. She felt like she'd just stepped into a war she hadn't signed up for. But deep down, that ember of defiance burned brighter, fueled by years of Karen's cruelty, Derek's entitlement, and the weight of a neighborhood that had been silenced for too long. The next morning, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You'll regret this. Watch your back." Hours later, she found a slashed tire on her car, a crude note tucked under her windshield wiper, "Leave." The day after, her mailbox was dented further, a small rock left on her doorstep with the word "bitch" scrawled on it. 2 days later, a dead rat was left on her porch, its message chillingly clear. She reported each incident to the police, who promised to patrol the street more frequently, but the weight of Karen's threat lingered like a storm cloud. At work, she overheard whispers from colleagues who lived in Willow Creek. "Karen's telling everyone you framed Derek," Maria said, her voice low with sympathy. "She's spreading lies at the country club, saying you're a troublemaker who faked the footage." Dr. Evans pulled her aside, his face grim. "Karen's got connections. Local business owners, someone at the police station, even a lawyer who handles HOA disputes. Be careful." Mrs. Torres whispered about a rumor that Karen was planning to sue Samantha for defamation. Samantha nodded, her jaw tight, but the weight of the community's eyes was heavy. She checked her security camera obsessively, her journal now a chronicle of every threat, every violation, every moment she refused to break. She started parking her car in the garage, locking her doors twice, keeping a baseball bat by her bed, and walking Lily to the bus stop each morning, her eyes scanning the street for any sign of trouble. By sunrise after the arrest, Samantha's phone was a lifeline to a neighborhood waking up. Texts poured in from numbers she didn't recognize, each one a crack in the wall of silence Karen had built. "Is it true Derek got arrested? Did Karen really try to blame you? Good for you standing up to her." Some were cautious, others bold. "She fined us $400 for a birdhouse. Thank you. We're with you." Samantha stared at the messages, stunned. For 2 years, she'd felt like a ghost in Willow Creek, invisible except when Karen needed a target. Now, neighbors she'd barely spoken to were reaching out, their words a mix of curiosity, support, and long-buried outrage. At the grocery store, Mrs. Callahan, a retiree with a sharp wit and a love for gardening, pulled her aside in the produce aisle. "I heard what happened," she said, her voice low but fierce. "That boy's been trouble for years and Karen's worse. She fined me $300 for planting tulips without her approval. Tulips? Said they were too vibrant for the neighborhood palate." Samantha nodded, her throat tight as Mrs. Callahan squeezed her arm. "You're not alone, dear. We've all been waiting for someone to fight back." Over coffee at the local diner, Mr. Patel, a soft-spoken accountant with kind eyes, shared his own story. A $200 fine for unauthorized business activity because Karen didn't like his clients parking on the street. "She stood in my driveway counting cars," he said, shaking his head. "Told me I was lowering property values." The Wilsons, a young couple with a newborn, admitted Karen had threatened to report them to CPS over a noisy baby monitor that had accidentally broadcast a lullaby to the street. "She said we were disturbing the peace," Mrs. Wilson said, her voice trembling. "Our daughter was 3 weeks old." The stories kept coming, each one a thread in the tapestry of Karen's tyranny. Mr. Henderson, who'd moved away after losing his battle with Karen, emailed Samantha a detailed account of how she'd driven him out with $3,500 in fines over a fence he'd built to keep his dog safe. She wanted control, he wrote. And she got it until now. The Garcias, a newlywed couple, shared a $150 fine for a non-compliant mailbox that was identical to Karen's own. Mr. Lopez, a single father, recounted a $400 fine for a cluttered garage when he'd been storing supplies for his daughter's school project. Mrs. Kim, an elderly widow, revealed a $500 fine for a non-compliant porch swing she'd had for decades, a gift from her late husband. Mrs. Torres, from the hospital, shared a $250 fine for a non-approved wind chime that had hung in her yard for years, a memento from her grandmother. The pattern was clear. Karen targeted anyone who didn't bow to her rule, using the HOA's bank account as her personal slush fund, funneling money to her brother-in-law's landscaping company for work that was shoddy or never done at all. Samantha wasn't sure what to do with the sudden support. She wasn't a hero, she was just a tired mom trying to survive. But when Lily came home from school with a tear-streaked face, saying Derek's friends had cornered her on the playground and called her the snitch's kid, Samantha's resolve hardened like steel. That night she found a small rock thrown through her mailbox, a note tied to it, "You're done." The next day her backyard gate was spray-painted with the word bitch. The day after, a dead rat was left on her doorstep, its message chillingly clear. A week later her car was keyed with a jagged scratch along the driver's side. She reported each incident to the police, her hands shaking, but the fire in her chest burned brighter. She wasn't backing down. She started small, inviting a few neighbors over for coffee on a Saturday morning. Mrs. Callahan brought her famous lemon bars, and Mr. Patel brought a notebook filled with HOA violation notices he'd kept for years, each one a testament to Karen's reign. The Wilsons came too, their baby cooing in a carrier, and Mr. Henderson drove an hour to join them, his eyes bright with determination. The Garcias, Mr. Lopez, Mrs. Kim, and Mrs. Torres showed up, along with Nguyen's, a young family who'd been fined $200 for a non-compliant basketball hoop. They sat around Samantha's kitchen table, swapping tales of Karen's abuses, their voices growing bolder with each story. It wasn't just about the fines, it was about the control, the fear, the way Karen had turned their community into her personal fiefdom. As the coffee grew cold, a plan began to take shape. They weren't just venting, they were organizing. They called themselves the Willow Creek Resistance, a half-joking name that carried a weight of truth. They met weekly in secret at Mrs. Callahan's house, mapping out their strategy, gathering evidence, and preparing for the fight of their lives. They reached out to former residents who'd been driven out, collecting affidavits and stories that painted a chilling picture of Karen's rule. They created a private group chat, sharing photos of violation notices, stories of harassment, and words of encouragement. Mrs. Torres brought a recording of Karen berating her over the wind chime, her voice dripping with venom. Mr. Lopez shared a photo of his daughter's school project, a model of the solar system, that had earned him a $400 fine. Samantha felt a spark of hope, but also fear. Karen wouldn't go down without a fight, and the slashed tire, the rock, the spray paint, the dead rat, the keyed car were just the beginning. She began walking Lily to and from the bus stop, her eyes scanning the street for any sign of trouble, her journal now a lifeline of evidence and resolve. She even started teaching Lily a secret whistle, a sharp, two-note signal, if she ever felt scared, a small way to feel in control amidst the chaos. The turning point came when Samantha met Rachel Nguyen, a local journalist and part of the Nguyen family, who lived a few streets over. Rachel was a firecracker, mid-30s with a quick smile and a knack for asking questions that cut to the bone. She'd been digging into the HOA's finances after Karen fined her $150 for a backyard vegetable garden that violated aesthetic standards. Over coffee at Samantha's kitchen table, Rachel spread out a stack of documents, bank statements, contracts, emails, all obtained through public records requests. Karen's been funneling thousands to her brother-in-law's landscaping company, she said, pointing to a line item for $30,000 labeled Community Beautification. Half the work was never done. Look at these invoices for tree trimming on streets with no trees. And here, fines issued to anyone who spoke out at HOA meetings. It's a pattern of intimidation. Samantha's hands trembled as she flipped through the pages, her heart racing with a mix of fear and exhilaration. The evidence was damning. $5,000 for a consulting fee to a company that didn't exist, $3,000 for a security upgrade that was just a new lock on Karen's own gate, $20,000 for a fountain project that had never broken ground, $7,000 for a maintenance fee for a clubhouse that was always locked, $10,000 for legal services. To a lawyer who'd never been seen, $15,000 for event planning for a picnic that never happened, $8,000 for community outreach, to Karen's cousin's PR firm. "What do we do with this?" Samantha asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "We take it public," Rachel said, her eyes bright with determination. "The next HOA meeting is in 2 weeks. If we get enough people to speak up, we can force a vote to remove her as president. But we need to be ready, she'll fight dirty." Samantha hesitated. Confronting Karen in public felt like walking into a lion's den with a target on her back. She thought of Lily, of the tears on her daughter's face, of the fines that had drained her savings, of the neighbors who'd been silenced for years. She thought of the slashed tire, the threatening notes, the spray paint, the dead rat, the keyed car. "Let's do it," she said finally, her voice steady with resolve. The days leading up to the meeting were a whirlwind. Samantha and Rachel became a two-woman war room, knocking on doors, sharing the evidence, and rallying neighbors. Some were skeptical, others terrified, but slowly a coalition formed. They met in secret at Mrs. Callahan's house, drafting statements, rehearsing their arguments, and preparing for Karen's inevitable counterattack. Mr. Patel dug deeper into the financials, uncovering more discrepancies. A $18,000 emergency repair fee for a playground that hadn't been touched in years, $6,000 for consulting by a firm linked to Karen's husband. The Wilsons designed flyers, simple but bold, with headlines like, "End the fines, end the fear." Mr. Henderson offered to speak about his experience, his voice thick with emotion as he recounted how Karen's harassment had driven him out of Willow Creek. Mrs. Kim brought a photo of her porch swing, its faded cushions a symbol of her defiance. Mr. Lopez shared a drawing his daughter had made for her school project, the one that had earned him a $400 fine. Mrs. Torres brought her recording of Karen's tirade, its venom chilling. Even Lily got involved, drawing posters with crayons that read, "Be kind," and "No more mean rules." The community center was packed the night of the meeting, the air thick with tension and the hum of whispered conversations. Over 100 residents filled the folding chairs, their faces a mix of curiosity, anger, and hope. Karen stood at the podium, her smile as tight as a coiled spring, her eyes scanning the crowd like a predator. She deflected questions about Derek's arrest with practiced ease, pivoting to her latest pet project, a $40,000 fountain for the neighborhood entrance. "It's about pride in our community," she said, her voice dripping with false sincerity. Samantha's heart pounded as she stood, her notes clutched in her sweaty palm. "I have a question," she said, her voice cutting through the room like a knife. "Why have HOA fees quadrupled in the last 3 years while certain residents, like your family, seem exempt from the rules?" The room went silent. Karen's smile faltered, her eyes narrowing to slits. "That's a baseless accusation," she snapped. "Sit down, Samantha." But Samantha didn't sit. She held up Rachel's documents, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "These show thousands of dollars paid to your brother-in-law's company for work that was never done. $30,000 for community beautification, that never happened, $5,000 for a fake consulting firm. And fines issued to anyone who questioned your leadership. $300 for tulips, $200 for a baby monitor, $3,500 for a fence. This isn't leadership. It's theft." A murmur rippled through the crowd, growing louder as Mr. Patel stood. "I was fined $200 for running my business, but your son sells sneakers online and gets a pass." Mrs. Callahan followed, her voice sharp as she recounted her $300 tulip fine. The Wilsons stood next, their baby asleep in a carrier, their voices trembling with anger as they described Karen's CPS threat. Neighbor after neighbor rose, their stories pouring out like a dam breaking, fines for children's chalk drawings, threats over holiday decorations, harassment that had gone unchecked for years. Mrs. Kim held up her photo, her voice shaking as she described her porch swing fine. Mr. Lopez held up his daughter's drawing, his voice breaking as he spoke of her fear. Mrs. Torres played her recording, Karen's venomous voice echoing through the room. A young mother shared how Karen had fined her $500 for a stroller left on her porch during a rainstorm. An elderly man recounted a $1,000 fine for a non-compliant shed that had stood for decades. Karen's face turned scarlet, her hands gripping the podium so tightly her knuckles whitened. "This is a witch hunt," she shouted, her voice shrill. "You're all jealous of my leadership. You have no proof." Rachel stepped forward, calm and unshakable, projecting her findings onto a screen, a damning timeline of Karen's abuses, backed by bank statements, emails, and signed affidavits from former board members who'd been pressured to resign. The evidence was undeniable, a stark portrait of corruption and control. Karen tried to interrupt, her voice rising to a scream, but the crowd wasn't listening anymore. They were on their feet, their voices a chorus of defiance, demanding accountability, demanding change. Karen's composure cracked. "You're all ungrateful," she shrieked, slamming her fist on the podium. "I've kept this neighborhood perfect. You'll regret this." She turned to the board, her voice desperate. "You can't let them do this. I've given everything to this community." But her words were drowned out by the crowd's roar, a tidal wave of voices that had been silenced for too long. The board, visibly shaken, called an emergency vote. The tally was unanimous. Karen was removed as HOA president. Mrs. Callahan was elected interim president, her voice choked with emotion as she promised transparency and fairness. As Karen stormed out, her heels clicking furiously on the hardwood floor, the room erupted in applause, not just for the victory but for the community that had found its voice. Samantha stood in the center of it all, her heart pounding, tears streaming down her face. She hadn't just fought for herself, she'd fought for all of them. As she looked out at the crowd, she saw Lily's crayon-drawn posters pinned to the wall, their bright colors a beacon of hope. In the months that followed, Willow Creek began to heal. The HOA rolled back unfair fines, refunding thousands to residents who'd been unfairly targeted. A new set of guidelines was drafted, with input from every household, prioritizing fairness and community over control. Samantha's candle business soared after Rachel published a feature in the local paper, her story of standing up to Karen resonating with readers across the county. Orders poured in from as far as Seattle, Chicago, London, Sydney, and even Tokyo, and for the first time, Samantha dared to dream of a future where she didn't have to choose between groceries and the mortgage. She hired 4 assistants, all from Willow Creek, a young woman who'd been fined $100 for a non-compliant porch swing, a teenager who'd been harassed by Derek's friends, Maria from the hospital, and Mrs. Torres, who'd quit her hospital job to join Samantha's growing business. Her kitchen became a small production hub, the scent of lavender, cedar, and her new Willow Whisper blend filling the air, a testament to her resilience. Samantha fixed the pool pump, and by the next summer, Lily was splashing happily with the neighbors' kids, their laughter echoing through the backyard under a canopy of fairy lights. Samantha hosted barbecues, book clubs, and a community garden project with Rachel, where Mrs. Callahan's tulips bloomed alongside Mr. Patel's tomatoes, the Wilson's sunflowers, the Garcia's chili peppers, Mrs. Kim's lavender, Mr. Lopez's daughter's marigolds, and Mrs. Torres's rosemary. The neighborhood felt alive again, its streets filled with the sounds of children playing, dogs barking, and neighbors chatting over fences, not out of fear but out of connection. Derek faced community service for his trespassing charge, and while Karen moved to a neighboring town, her shadow lingered in the stories neighbors told over cold beers and homemade pies. They weren't stories of anger but of triumph, of a community that had refused to stay silent. Samantha became a quiet leader, not because she sought the spotlight, but because people trusted her heart. She organized a neighborhood cleanup, a scholarship fund for local kids, and a swim party for Lily's 7th birthday, the pool sparkling under a twilight sky. The event was a celebration of everything they'd reclaimed, their homes, their voices, their community. Lily's posters from the HOA meeting hung on the fence, their crayon colors faded but still bright, a reminder of the fight they'd won. The threats didn't stop immediately. 4 months after the meeting, Samantha received anonymous texts, "You can't win. We're watching." Her car was keyed twice and a dead rat was left on her doorstep, its message chillingly clear. One night, her security camera caught a hooded figure spray painting her garage, though the footage was too grainy to identify them. Another time, a brick was thrown through her kitchen window, narrowly missing her as she worked on her candles. She reported each incident, her hands steady now, and the police increased patrols. The Willow Creek resistance rallied around her, taking turns checking her property, installing their own cameras and walking Lily to the bus stop. Mrs. Callahan baked her extra lemon bars, Mr. Patel helped her fix her mailbox, the Wilsons invited Lily for playdates, and Mrs. Kim sewed a new curtain for her broken window. The fear was real, but so was their support, and it carried her through. The real victory came one quiet evening as Samantha tucked Lily into bed. Her daughter looked up, her eyes wide with wonder, her stuffed bunny clutched tight. "Mommy, are you a superhero now?" Samantha laughed, brushing a curl from Lily's forehead, her heart swelling with a love so fierce it hurt. "No, sweetie. I'm just someone who didn't give up." Lily grinned, her gap-toothed smile brighter than the moon outside. "That's what superheroes do, Mommy. They keep going even when it's scary. You made the mean lady go away and now everyone's happy. And I'm not scared anymore. I know you'll always protect me." Samantha's throat tightened, tears prickling her eyes as she kissed Lily's forehead. She turned off the light, standing in the doorway as her daughter drifted to sleep, her soft breathing a lullaby of peace. For years, Samantha had felt like she was fighting alone. Against Karen, against the fines, against the threatening notes, the slashed tires, the spray paint, the dead rat, the keyed car, the brick through her window, against a world that seemed determined to break her. But in Willow Creek, she'd found something stronger. A community that had her back, neighbors who'd become family, and a voice she'd never known she had. The next morning, as she lit a willow whisper candle and watched the sunrise paint the sky in shades of gold and pink, Samantha felt a quiet certainty settle in her chest. She thought of the threats, the fear, the moments she'd almost given up. They hadn't broken her. She'd faced the storm and come out stronger, not because she was fearless, but because she'd found something worth fighting for. Her daughter, her home, her community. She pulled out her journal and began sketching plans for a new candle scent, Willow Bloom, inspired by the community garden, a blend of tulip, lavender, marigold, rosemary, and sunlight. It would be her tribute to Willow Creek, to the fight they'd won, to the future they'd built together. Willow Creek wasn't just her home now. It was her victory, her sanctuary, and the place where she and Lily could finally dream without fear. As the candle's flame flickered, casting soft shadows across her kitchen, Samantha smiled. She opened her journal one last time, writing a final entry. July 12, 2025, we won. Not just me but all of us. For Lily, for Willow Creek, for the home we made together. No one will dim our light again.